Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to this one. I've wanted to dig into third-party stores for a while now. I think it's a really interesting area, and I think there's a lot of potential growth for companies here. Um, Before we get into that, do you want to start by introducing yourself? Who are you and
Sure,
what do you do?
sure, Adam. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here with you today. But my name is Álvaro Pinto. I'm one of the co-founders of Aptoide. We call it the original App Store because actually the first version of the store, Android store, was launched back in 2009. And then the company was only incorporated in 2011, but early days of Android and iOS. And we
So
started
it was 2009. So you were actually running as a third party app store back then. How did
exactly that.
like for
And
APKs or?
yes, for APKs, and we started the idea. Also, actually came from summertime internship, and the idea was, okay, let's take there's this platform, amazing platform, Android. Let's explore it. There's the possibility of having alternative stores there, ways to distribute content. So let's explore it. And we came up with this idea because we have myself and Paulo. We had this background on Linux and open source. And okay, Linux distribution of software is quite different because it's decentralized. So let's make something that is more decentralized than the one single store and allow people to have their own stores. And actually, this initial concept, is quite fresh nowadays because this could work and works today. Because
Out of interest, what was the initial concept? Like, were you going, okay, we're going to do competition to like Google App Store, or were you trying to fulfill some niche, or what was the thought process surrounding it?
Yeah, it was, first of all, it was an internship project. So let's jump into a new idea.
The world.
Yes, let's test something like we have this background of innovation and trying to have people trying out new things. Even today, just to tell you that we still have this program for internships, and every single year we have like 7 to 10 projects, people working on new projects and new ideas around the store and distribution. So back in the days, there was this idea of, okay, we have Linux with a decentralized model, and so there are different repositories of apps and software for Linux. Let's mimic this and make something similar to Android. And that's how the platform started. And we started to be a user-generated content platform because, okay, anyone, Adam, you want to have your own store? You can have it. So you just go to the platform and create your own store and start distributing your own games, your own stuff. And so you're free to do whatever you want, similar to YouTube and other platforms.
So it's effectively white label. I could generate my own store.
Exactly.
That's how it works.
Interesting. Yeah, it's white label. We also ran the program some years later with partnerships for white labeling, etc. But the idea was, okay, something. The best example is YouTube. Okay, you have your own channel, and back in the days, you had your own channel. You can distribute your content, produce your content. Sometimes you share content from third parties. Okay, there might be some legal issues with it, but nevertheless, it's a way for the platform to expand. So we use exactly the same concept. And actually, that was the way for us to grow because people were creating their own stores, sharing content, their content, third-party content. But the fact is that we grew in the first years of the company fully organic growth, investment in acquisition, and it was quite a success. But with the years coming, it became more and more difficult to manage this concept because we all converge into a single store model where there's only this store. There are some other alternative stores, but very limited in the way what they can do actually, and so it became less interesting. But actually today you could almost resurrect the initial concept and say, no, we are a platform, decentralized model for distribution of apps, and anyone can have their own store. And it makes more sense today than it did like 5 years ago, but it was perfectly a fresh idea and different idea on Android ecosystems and mobile ecosystems back in the days in 2009, 10, 11, and 11 we started the company.
So okay, sorry, this has kind of blown my mind a little bit. I didn't know this facet of the platform, but if
Yeah.
I wanted so if I wanted to create my own store through you guys, I could create my own store. Does that mean that I would have to engage with all of the developers and everything in order to get their apps on my version of your store, or can I pull over apps to be able to run on that store? You know, if those apps are already with you, can
Yeah,
I?
sure. Yeah. You could do that both. So means that yes, you could bring content because you have a relation with the developer, or you are a developer and you want to distribute your own apps. You could say that in my store I also have available the apps that are already in the platform that were submitted by developers or someone else, and
Yeah.
you could just
So
have
I
a
could I
catalog of
could
it.
I could curate my own version of your store, but just with the apps that I wanted to have on there.
Yeah, sure. And
Okay.
this is like okay, this can be people were using it to have all their games and apps that they enjoyed having
Yeah,
in
to
their
share with
Android
people.
devices.
It's quite
Share
cool.
with people. Or no, I want this store that is only about vintage gaming or whatever is your favorite stuff. And there we had several like that. So it was actually a much more open and interesting environment, I believe, than having one single store and one single model for people
Yeah,
to
yeah.
distribute.
No, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Might have to have a play with that later. Okay, so let's take it back. I've got carried away with it, but so when we say alternative app store, like what are we actually talking about? Let's define it. Let's define it up front. What the conversation's actually about.
Yeah, for us, alternative means, of course, you have the incumbents and you have these major app stores from Google and Apple, and everything that is different from that is alternative in our way of thinking. It's okay. It can be mimicking what Google and Apple are already offering, or can be something completely different. This example of okay, decentralized stores is completely different from what you get in Google Play Store or Apple App Store, but it can be anything outside
In a
these
similar
two big platforms.
fashion to the sort of Samsung App Store, the Galaxy Store, is that would you say that's the same kind of thing that you're doing? Or I mean, obviously they're building the hardware as well, so there's kind of that captive ecosystem again. But
Yeah. That's a good example for OEMs to have their own stores, or for developers to have their own stores, or for carriers to have their own stores. Those are alternative, definitely.
okay,
Considering what the state of this market and the ecosystem we have, those are all alternative. Of course, it's not. We've worked in the past with several carriers and OEMs, and we still do. So that's one of the benefits of our platform, because
okay,
what
sort
we
of
offer,
white labeled, you mean?
it's not white label nowadays, because we had this concept of white label back in the days, and we started this program in 2013, but then we gave up from it, and now we are more focused on offering the Aptoide store. And actually Aptoide store is three different things. One is Aptoide Web, which is the app store on the web. Then we have App Store, which is the traditional app store that is a generic app store, and then we have Aptoide Games, which is only focused on games.
Okay,
And for example, nowadays we have some carriers in the US with our platform, which is rebranded as GamesUp, because comes from a partnership with Digital Turbine, and
okay,
so
yeah.
we have this in the US as an example. But we also have,
So
for
is
example,
that if it's running with Digital Turbine, does that mean it's like pre-installed on devices as well? Then
yeah, it can be pre-installed or side-loaded,
yeah, yeah.
but yes, it's pre-installed in many devices there. And for example, we have a partnership, just another different example, with Nokia for some markets, or with Xiaomi to distribute our content in their own store and in Xiaomi devices. So we are working also with them. So it means that the Aptoide store is also targeting those users and that market of preloaded stores coming from carriers and OEMs.
Mm.
And helping them out also to distribute better content because we close these partnerships with developers and especially on the game sides of things we also provide this content to third party stores. And so we have like a one-stop shop, we call it Aptoide Connect, that allows the developer to submit their game to our platform, certify the game, integrate the billing, and then distribute across currently more than 10 different channels, not only Aptoide, of course, and
Oh,
our
okay.
ecosystem,
Yeah.
other stores. So it's a one-stop shop for them to manage the distribution and the monetization across
So you almost
multiple
become like a distribution network for games.
Yeah, and look, this made sense to us. We launched this back in 2019 because for the first version of it, because we thought, one of the biggest pains for developers to distribute outside Google and Apple are, of course, it's quite convenient because there's these massive stores from these two companies that are convenient because you submit and you reach everybody in the world globally. But what about alternative stores? Oh, it's a huge pain for us because we have to integrate technology from different stores to distribute across them. Of course, when you compare the user base and the potential of Google or Apple's platforms with other platforms, even Aptoide, it's limited. Even if it's 50 million users, it's still limited because when you're comparing with a massive market like Google Play. So what about combining all of them in one single shop, and the developer just needs to submit the app and manages the app across the different stores? That was the concept, the idea, and try to help developers of games and apps to do this in a very convenient and straightforward way.
Yeah, it's funny. It kind of goes into my next question, really. Like, so the way I see it, it's this conversation as a whole really should be broken down into two parts. You've got the App Store and how you grow the App Store and how you grow the network there in order to be able to service the customers that are on it. And then you've got, like, from a developer's perspective, say I'm a developer, why it makes sense for me to put my app on your app store as opposed to, I don't know, Samsung One or just running with Google Play. I mean, like, why? And also, I guess, like, further down the list is what is it okay? You know, is it, what does Google think about this and Apple think about this? I mean, I know I've seen all of the stuff in the news. You know, the sort of the in the EU with the Epic and Apple case and everything else, and the way that has been seemingly busted open, but not quite, maybe. Like, so I think there's an interesting discussion point there. But let's start with you have to grow your user base of your app store. So how are you approaching that, and what, you know, how can you compete? For me as a developer, sort of asking you're coming in saying, hey, put your app on my store. If your user base isn't big enough or loyal enough or the right fit for my game, then I'm not going to get installs from it, and it's going to be a sort of pointless exercise, I guess. So how are you approaching that, and how are you solving that problem?
Yeah, good point. So first of all, as I told you, initially we grow our user base organically. So people were excited about having their own stores or participating in something that was an alternative, and there weren't many at the time, and still you don't have many alternative stores. Although you have, of course, OEMs with carriers nowadays trying to have their own stuff, but
That's only
outside.
things with a sort of I can't think of the word, like a walled garden, effectively. You know, I mean, they're either manufacturers with their own hardware.
It's very specific. It's very specific.
Yeah.
And typically these are very generic stores. Of course, you have in some cases, for example, game-centered solutions like, for example, Samsung is providing, but typically are more of a generic alternative that is side by side with Google in the device, and people can pick one or the other.
Yeah.
Typically, that's what happens. But it grew organically. But then, of course, we have some challenges. For example, there's a lot of challenges on user acquisition, as you probably know, on alternative stores, because the friction to install sideload apps, it's still a problem.
Yeah.
And going back to the other topic you want to discuss, but this is a big problem. It's an elephant in the room, one of the elephants, and this needs to be fixed, but it's challenging. So we have to find out other ways. Of course, we work on SEO, we do some campaigns, limited ones, but we do to acquire users. But okay, we cannot rely only on that. For example, we work a lot with influencers, and this has been working pretty well in the last few years. So promoting Aptoide, but also the games, and many times we promote the game, and with that we are promoting also our platform. And one of the things that we offer to gamers is actually rewards. And so we have this gamification engine in our store, in our wallet for payments, where we have offers to users and to gamers. And as the more they spend, the more they get as bonus, not discounts, but bonus to be used within our ecosystem. So this means that you are playing one of our games like Raid that we recently launched in our platform. And okay, you're playing Raid, but you are getting rewards, and you can reuse this to play more on Raid or to play other games that we have available with our solution. And we've seen this
almost like a loyalty scheme or something. You know, it's that kind of, you know, if you're
exactly.
spending money in the games, then you get interesting.
Yeah. And so this of course we are building in the last years a community of gamers and people that really love games, really are willing to spend money on games. And okay, we are providing them a good experience. For example, in terms of support and one-to-one support in many cases, we are offering them more rewards than other platforms, and this is quite compelling for gamers. So this a developer that wants to join us, of course, will benefit from this. And even you have this user base that are playing already the games we have in the platform, but there's a new game, and we can tell them, oh, there's this new game, and you can use your rewards and all the credits you have to play this game. Why not trying it out? And this helps to grow, of course, the user base for newcomers, for new game developers.
As we're talking here, I'm sort of like, everything you're saying, there's a very strong correlation between what you're saying and rewarded ad networks. Like, is that something that you've thought of, like, in terms of maybe, you know, you're already giving extra discount on purchases if they purchase through your app store, kind of thing, you know, if they purchase through installing from your app store? So is that something that you could look at in the future in actually incorporating more of a, like, I don't know, get a voucher for Amazon or something if you do X amount or play this game, you know, because you could almost start to bring the sort of ad network aspect into the store as well. So you become like that rewarded channel as well as the ad network as well, or the store as well.
Yeah, and makes full sense. We are exploring it nowadays, and it makes full sense to incorporate this. And it's twofold, because on one way we are strengthening our offer to the users, of course, with more options, more possibilities, even bringing users that are not spending so much money in games, but are willing to spend some, or willing to play to get some rewards and continue to play other games in our ecosystem. On the other hand, we are solving, and it's twofold because of this, because we are solving one of the big challenges that we have today, which is the acquisition that we were talking about, acquisition outside the two main platforms.
Yes.
And so this, of course, there's friction, but if there's more rewards and more incentives for the user to install and play, okay, we will get better results. It's obvious. So this makes full sense to us.
How are you solving that at the moment? Like, I mean, you said that there's a lot of friction there from, you know, say it's quite funny. Like I think the first day we started talking, ironically, Plarium had just released Raid on your platform.
Exactly.
How are you kind of? I mean, a lot of these companies run huge amounts of user acquisition, and if it's difficult, if you're going to lose that or if you're going to add a lot of friction in terms of the ad through to the install, because obviously you've either got to install the store or if you've already got it installed, then go through to the store and that kind of stuff. Do you find that there's a much bigger drop off, and also how are you negating that drop off?
Yeah, there's a much higher drop off, definitely. So we need to be very creative in the ways we do it. We need to educate users. One of the things we are doing is trying to do, and this is all alternative stores. And if you look into other platforms, Epic as an example, they are doing this, trying to show to users that it's okay to sideload, it's okay to bypass all these warnings from Google and Apple. It's fine, no issues, and no risk for you. And it's been progressing, but it's still a challenge, of course. And then trying to be creative in the ways that we promote the games, and the way that, for example, allowing users to see how is the game, how eventually being able to play the game. It's something we are exploring. Have a fresh start there and start to play the game and see how it looks. And so more incentives so people need to be more compelling. The good news is that we feel that the market is changing and people are more and more willing to try out alternative channels. And also you see many people now today saying that, no, I don't want to use the two big platforms. I want to try something else. I don't want to give my data to the big companies. And this is growing in the market. And we see more and more people interested in having, even though there's friction, they are willing to try out. And of course, they need to trust. And that's also an effort, a huge effort on our side to show people that, okay, we are trustable. There's no risk to your device if you install through us. And this is, of course, key. And it's something we've been doing since the early days.
Yeah, because you presumably have to reiterate that security aspect, because obviously there's a lot of security concerns that go along with sideloading and everything else. So you need to establish that security with the user in order to sort of say, hey, it's all right, we're not going to screw you over. We're good. You can trust us. It's interesting. And I like what I sort of looked at the Raid one. It's quite funny. After we talked for the first time, I then saw the launch, and I saw all of the things that came from the launch. One of the interesting things that I saw that they did was to put a promotion code specifically for users through your platform, which kind of drives traffic there anyway, which I thought was really interesting. So I guess it's coming up with new ways of being able to entice users into different platforms and stuff, from not just from your side, but also from the studio side.
And this is that is actually a key point, because we felt for several years that we were alone in this fight of having alternative solutions for both developers and users. But nowadays, of course, with all the effort on Epic and other companies pushing for more openness in the market, we see developers more and more engaged into alternative distribution, in even their own distribution, of course, which is also growing and it's relevant. But you see that and this is a very good example. I think it was impossible like 3 or 4 years ago to come to a developer, and we had several top games like Raid coming on board with us and tell, hi developer, we are launching this, please help us out, give something to the users for them to be more compelled to install our version or try out our version. This was almost impossible 3 or 4 years ago. But nowadays, you see the example of Plarium, and thanks Plarium for that. It helps a lot, and they understand the benefit of having multiple choices, multiple channels, sometimes channels which offer them more in the end of the day than the incumbents. So this is it's a sign that the market is changing. And with the alignment with developers, I think things will definitely change in the coming years. It's not about regulators; they have their role, and we expect to see a lot there. But okay, if we have the industry really aligned and committed to do something different, more innovative, more open, with more options to developers and users, it's amazing. I think it will be amazing.
So you mentioned the market's changing.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we stand at the moment? Like, where can you use this on what platform, and how, what's acceptable and what isn't, I guess. How far can you push these boundaries right now, and
Yeah.
where?
Yeah, sure. Look, first of all, we were one of the very first companies to try to push regulators to change the status quo. So our first complaint against Google was submitted in 2014 with the European Commission, and we kickstarted with other companies. We were not alone, but very few actually. We kickstarted this process, and then 2 years ago, there was this new law, as you know, in Europe, DMA, and other countries are following it also. Japan, UK, even in the US with the court files, etc. But this DMA seems to be a great idea, and what was trying to push for was a more level play field for alternative distribution and competition in the distribution market. Actually, what we saw last year, it was the first signs were really promising. So in March, the Apple opened to alternative stores, and we were one of the first also to submit our request to we want to have an iOS store, and we launched it back in June 2024, and there's a few ones in the market, but the restrictions and the barriers that we are still facing means that it's really, really, really difficult to compete with these restrictions. We need to change this. So it was a first step, the DMA and the action on with Google and Apple trying to open a little bit. Actually, on Google side, we didn't see much compared with what we had before. There was not such progress. So the problems we face today are the same a year ago.
It's always been easier on Google anyway, with the sort of availability of being able to install an APK, right? I mean, you can put it, you can host it on your website if you want to, and allow the user to go and install it.
Yeah, in that aspect, DMA was somehow to have two gatekeepers on stores, Apple and Google, was beneficial somehow to Google, because there's always this argument that, oh no, we are much more advanced and we are much more open than Apple. So Apple is opening up, but there's still a way there to go, some miles to go. And Google can always argue that, oh no, we are already much more open than Apple. So what's the problem with Android? And so this is also an issue. But I think there will be changes, and the good part is that this is spreading in the world. It started with the MBA, but it's spreading. And actually, yesterday, I'm not sure if you saw the news that in Brazil, it seems that Apple will be forced to open up also to alternative stores in Brazil. So this is happening every single week. There is more news about regulator pushing the incumbents, and I believe this is unstoppable. Hopefully, it could be we could go through a very fast pace. It's still slower than we would like to and expected, but it's speeding up. It's speeding up.
Where do you see it? Where do you see? What's the end game? Where do you see it going? Like, how do you see this playing out over the next couple of years? What's the kind of what's the ideal situation? I mean, the ideal situation presumably is you become as big as one of the standard stores. But how do you actually see it playing out?
Yeah, so there's we have a good example that you can follow, which is China. So in China, as you know, without Google Store on Android, you have multiple stores. So you have I remember talking with a Chinese partner back in 2015 or 16. They were saying, no, currently we have like more than 400 app stores in China. And so this diversity was already there, and this is a good example of how things can evolve. And we think that, of course, Google and Apple, if things really change, regulators do their pressure, and things are change progressively, I think in 4 or 5 years from now, we will have a different landscape where, of course, Google and Apple play a major role. There's no discussion on that.
Yeah.
But the market will be much more fragmented, and probably, as we see in China, you have 2 or 3 more other stores that have a slice of the pie that is relevant. 10%, 15%, 8% of the market, which is a huge market, so it's a relevant pie of it. So I think this will happen, but also you'll see direct to consumer approaches from developers, definitely. And I think they are really focused on that nowadays. It's one of the things, even because of that, for example, on top of what we offer as a distribution platform for Aptoide and other stores, we also tell developers, look, you integrate our solution and you can also use it to do your own stuff and to try out your direct distribution, do your own user acquisition, if you will. And because they are really focused on this, I think this will also have a relevant role. But if the new stores and the different models of distribution add value, it's obvious that the developers need them, because it's a way to reach more users and to reach them in a different and more innovative way. And of course, it's really difficult for you to run all this business by yourself. You are focused on producing the best games in the world, not in producing the best distribution in the world, which is a challenge is as big as producing the game, or even
for sure. Yeah, it always has been. Okay, so I guess lastly, from the perspective of the game studios, like if I have a game studio now, why, in your words, why should I think about doing this? Like, why now? Why not wait until Apple or Google says, "Hey, yeah, this is fine. Come and do it."
Yeah, I'm not sure if they will say that, but fine.
I'm not sure they ever will. But...
Okay, so you have to jump into it, and first of all, so we of course, because we are smaller platforms, it's much easier for you to engage with us and have to stand out, to have a promotional, for example, promotional plan that you wouldn't dream of in Google and Apple's platform, because otherwise you had to invest on it and pay for user acquisition. But we offer it, okay? You want to be on Editor's Choice, you want to be on Editor's Choice on Aptoide, but also in 7 other stores? Yeah, we have it, and we can offer that. We can launch this, we can have rewards specifically for your game. So more tailor-made promotion, it's something that you won't get from the big companies. Yeah. And when you talk with developers, you hear them complaining for years now that, okay, it's really difficult to stand out in these 2 big platforms. It's a huge investment, and we've been trying to be creative on that, but even though it doesn't work. So it's a red ocean, it's expensive. How can we stand out in different ways? This is a way, of course. And this is obviously a good opportunity. And in the end of the day, you don't lose nothing, because, look, the conditions we set for developers are actually better in terms of revenue-wise, revenue share with developers. So, okay, even if you think, oh, but this might jeopardize my user base in Google or Apple, eventually, but if you're getting more from those users, what's the point?
Yeah, but it's also, if there's not a huge cost to it, it's kind of like, well, let's give it a shot, see what happens. I mean...
True. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a fantastic conversation. I'm looking forward to checking in every so often as we move along this, to see whenever there's any changes that happen, and just following the story. I think it's super interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see next episodes. Excited about it, but yeah, definitely. It's exciting times nowadays, and I think we will have big changes coming, and yeah, happy to come back and have good news for you and for developers.
Amazing. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much.